on the night of the 1st of June in the year 2019. A gray Renault Couleos pulled up and stopped directly in front of the famous Museum of Far Eastern Art, situated in the picturesque city of Geneva. 3 men, each wearing ski masks that covered their faces, clad in dark attire that merged with the darkness of the night, and wearing gloves to prevent their fingerprints from being detected, stepped out of a vehicle and walked up the stairs towards the sturdy and solid wooden front door, stretched over for top class and carefully designed floors of a stunning and homely 19th century townhouse. The museum, which is equally known as the Bohr Foundation, features within its structure an impressive and world-acclaimed collection. This fabulous collection features an incredible diversity of artifacts from Japan and China, which gives people a vision of the two great nations' glorious cultural history. The hitherto uninterrupted silence was suddenly and harshly disrupted by the loud, jarring sound of a power tool as the gang, as the group is ordinarily called, used both a crowbar and a saw to break through the front door by force. Having managed to make their own improvised opening through the gap they had cut out, Kay swiftly crawled through it and then ran with haste towards the display cabinets containing precious artifacts from the glorious imperial Ming Dynasty period. Kay's relics that went as far back as the 14th century. Kay, after violently smashing open all of the available cases and cabinets that were around them, they promptly and successfully grabbed 2 bowls and a decorative vase. Rushing back for the entrance door, they scurried through the only available tight and narrow opening in it. Once safely out on the other side, they jumped into waiting Renault vehicle and hastily sped into the surrounding darkness of engulfing night that was upon them. The gang, with all their diligence to see that they left absolutely nothing behind which would potentially serve to further anyone's knowledge about themselves, were quite remiss in their frantic hurry to exit hastily from the site. In doing so, during that hectic exodus, one of them accidentally touched with the stomach against the hard, raw edges of the gap created on the door. This mishap ended up leaving behind DNA traces that would be used for identification purposes and potentially for that of his entire gang. The sample that had been obtained later returned a name: Stuart Ahern, a father of 5 children, who lives in the Greenwich area, which is in the southeast region of London, and earned his livelihood as a skilled tradesman. Reports confirmed that he had indeed flown from London City Airport on a British Airways flight, which was heading for Geneva the day before he committed the burglary. Added to that valuable piece of evidence, he also rented a car, an SUV made by Renault, which, based on description, strongly resembled the car that was seen parked in the area surrounding the museum during the period of time when it is alleged he committed his burglary. In a concerted effort, Geneva detectives enlisted the help of the renowned Metropolitan Police of London. This was a specialized unit that was headed by Detective Chief Inspector Matthew Webb. Later, this unit traveled to Europol, based in The Hague, to continue their investigation. There were shown video recordings taken through the CCTV cameras outside the museum on the day before the raid actually occurred. The video, when examined, appeared to show a man recording a section of the area actively, implying that he must be collecting some kind of reconnaissance footage. At that very moment, they deduced after some deliberation that the person they were talking about was, in fact, none other than Stuart Ahern's younger brother, as they continued to elucidate, that is, Louis Ahern. "We cried with much excitement and enthusiasm," said Detective Chief Inspector Webb, highlighting the thrilling quality of the moment we were living. "We knew him, and it must have indeed been a lucky moment for them." By then, in the course of the events unfolding, they had already managed to arrest the second one. The committed Swiss detective squad then went on to disclose in detail what they had carefully discovered through their inquiry. A full-scale inquiry into the activities of car rental agency based at Geneva Airport yielded an interesting discovery. Far removed from the first thought that the car in question had been a 6-month-old vehicle, it turned out that the Renault had piled up an incredibly high mileage on what could only be termed a remarkably brief time frame. Propelled by an intuitive sense, Swiss police officer Gilles Mador went ahead and carefully measured the distance that existed between Geneva Airport and the museum. He did not hesitate. He went further to take his measurements to a French ferry port, stretching the calculations further to the addresses of the brothers in London. Having calculated those distances, he went ahead and finally calculated the return journey to the location from where he began his measurements. It was almost, or if you want a better description, it was really close to being a perfect fit, said Detective Chief Inspector Webb, playing up his observation for accuracy. Some weeks after the major raid, the Aherns took a trip to Hong Kong, which fact became evident during the trial process held at Geneva. They took one of the 2 stolen bowls, which they had hidden in their luggage, to the prestigious China Guardian auction house. There, after giving the staff members his passport information, Louis Ahern managed to sell the bowl for a staggering amount of 236,000 Hong Kong dollars, which is equivalent to 23,800 pounds, as was shown and revealed in court hearings. The next breakthroughs in the case were realized after a long period of barely over a year, during which there were no noteworthy developments. In late July of the year 2020, a sensational and outstanding development surfaced when China Guardian, highly reputed and well-known auction house, received a curious email message from a person presenting himself as Mr. Steele. In the email message, Mr. Steele asserted that he had newly purchased a unique and distinctive pomegranate bottle vase and inquired about its valuation, stating that he was interested in knowing its value. Interpol, working with the museum, has confirmed, through an exhaustive photographic analysis, that the item in question was, indeed, a vase that had been previously reported missing. A few days later, since he had yet to receive any kind of acknowledgement or reply about his previous request for evaluation, Mr. Steele decided it was time for him to again approach the Hatton Garden Art Loss Register, seeking further help. In his renewed communication with them, he made certain that he owned a certain vase, and proceeded further by explaining that said vase had been stolen a year ago from Switzerland and is worth 3 million pounds. I am making a personal effort today to help return this piece back to its natural place. The initial location it was taken from or stolen would really appreciate any assistance you can help me with on this case. China Guardian then contacted the Met Police for support, and consequently, undercover officers who were masquerading as staff contacted in association with Mr. Steele. This interaction formed a pivotal aspect of an undercover operation that sought intelligence. It was found that his real name was indeed David Lamming, as originally thought, and further research found that his email address was traceable to the family of Aherns. One of the officers, operating with an alias or cover name of Paul, successfully made contact with the gang responsible for being a party in said case. Through this first point of contact, he made arrangements for a meeting with Lamming so that he could discuss and haggle over a fee at which said vase could be sold. On the 30th of September, Lamming, whose name was Paul, and a second undercover officer who was posing as a buyer and was called Richard, met for what appeared to be a social lunch at the high-end and elite Scots restaurant. The restaurant is located in the fashionable and glittering Mayfair district of London, which is renowned for its wealth and opulence. Throughout their lunch, which he shared with him, Lamming used the time to tell Richard that, actually, the vase had been stolen from its owner by 3 people throughout the past year. He went on to identify one of those people by naming an individual named Stu. And additionally, he indicated that he was speaking with a second individual named Dave with a view to finding a potential buyer for the vase. Both men reached an agreement and arranged to meet again, and on the 7th of October, both Stewart, Ahern, and Lamming met their undercover purchaser, who operated under the pseudonym Richard at an establishment by the name of Delfino S., which so happened to be another venue located in Mayfair. A third and final meeting, which was particularly arranged to allow for the exchange of both the cash and the stolen vase, was arranged to occur on the 15th of October. This meeting was to take place in the upscale 5-star Marriott Hotel, which was conveniently situated in the nearby Grosvenor Square area. On the day of great significance for that impending gathering, Richard arrived at the assigned Marriott location, which specifically took place within room 347. This particular room, at precisely that time, was closely checked and watched by members of the police department who were keeping a watchful eye over what transpired. He had also brought a third undercover policeman with him who was working in the persona of a man called Miranda. This officer had specialist knowledge in Far Eastern artwork and had the requisite skills and experience needed to properly authenticate the vase in question. They were later than we had originally hoped, and during all of that time, there was just no communication from them about what had been delaying them, said Det. Ch. Insbweb, looking back at those days. You do wonder, will any of them turn up at all? Why are they so late? When do you reach the point where you call it a day and do something else? At that time, one of the associates, who is known as Leslie Mbaki Nkwa, was spotted and recognized outside by the vigilant surveillance unit that had been watching the vicinity. He dragged behind him a large, dark black suitcase as he navigated through the crowded lobby of the Marriott Hotel, where he ran into Stuart Ahern, someone he knew. The two of them then walked together towards the room they were going to. Out of the suitcase's interior popped a bright yellow, attention-grabbing JD sports bag, and inside it was the same vase that had been illegally removed and was now lying quietly. The vase had been placed exactly there, and that specific piece of information acted as the ideal cue which I needed to inform my unit it was time for our entry into the room. Detective Chief Inspector Webb continued. It was the instant that the vase was safely in the skilled hands of Miranda that the police quickly rushed into the room, carrying out a well-organized maneuver, and went on to arrest the two men implicated in the incident. Lamming waited outside the Marriott Hotel, proving himself a man of great patience, his appointment pending. His driver, Kane Wright, attended him. Wright, a glittering performing t-ball player back in his day, played for two well-thought-of clubs, namely Brentford and West Ham. When Nkwa and Stuart Ahern failed to return as had been planned and intended, the two men made a decision to drive away from the location of the incident. All the same, it did not take long for them to be arrested by the authorities afterwards. During the investigation process, it turned out that Ahern's passport had been found at Nkwa's home in southeast London. A leaflet that had its origin in the high-ranking Geneva Museum was also found and recovered during the investigation. In this very leaflet, a noticeable and bold circle had been carefully drawn around the pictures that represented the looted artifacts belonging to the renowned Ming Dynasty. Wright and Nkwa were also put in a tricky spot, since they were charged with harsh legal penalties. They were both convicted within the City of London for a serious crime of conspiracy to convert criminal property. They were handed hefty sentences upon being convicted, with Wright receiving a sentence of 3 years within a jail and Nkwa being sentenced for 30 months of imprisonment, respectively. In a dramatic turn of events, which could only be described, Lamming decided against his initial scheduled trial by agreeing to change his plea for guilty at only minutes before his trial period. Consequently, he was later sentenced for a jail term of 3 years and 2 months for having been present within the case. The Ahern brothers also had a legal experience of their own, wherein they were extradited within Switzerland within 2022. They accepted having been present during a trial held within Geneva on the 15th of January. Louis Ahern said that he participated out of a need to clear a debt that he had been carrying with him. Stuart Ahern, on the contrary, said that his motivation was fueled by a strong urge to safeguard his younger brother from any harm or trouble. Notwithstanding that prosecutor Razia severely and vehemently denied and challenged the brothers' version of events, he clearly stated with utmost confidence that every single brother, together with yet a further individual, was put forward by the court as being Daniel Kelly, who, incidentally, is Wright's as biological father, were all held to be equally responsible for burglary, which is now what is being considered. He announced that the person who had been described as the third person concerned was, at the specific moment, not in the courtroom. This person was, in reality, currently under active extradition proceedings that were attempting to have them sent to Japan. At one point in the court hearing, Stuart Ahern was overcome with emotion and burst into tears, no longer able to hold back. At this point, his mother, Suzanne Ahern, came forward and revealed to the people in court that his brother, Louis, had been writing letters to his 9-year-old son from prison. Louis was trying to offer the sort of support and guidance that he never got from their father. The two men apologized profusely and showed their remorse for their actions, which had serious repercussions. Due to their actions, they were made to serve 3.5 years in jail. They were also banned from entering Switzerland for 5 years once they were released. Patrick Money conveyed that measures that were taken within this case were considerable and potentially irreparable, further establishing the seriousness of concern with which this topic is being treated. This seriousness is further compounded by the ominous fact that of all the particular bowls used within this case, known colloquially as a chicken cup, said bowl is yet to be found or recovered even today. The beautiful vase, which was found and recovered in the middle of central London, and the ornamental bowl, which was sold at the high-profile auction house in Hong Kong, have both now been safely returned to the highly respected Museum of Far Eastern Art in Geneva. Whilst the museum itself has chosen not to make any official comments regarding this case, Detective Chief Inspector Webb has stated that the committed group of people who helped recover these two valuable artifacts have received thanks from the museum curator. Still brought a smile to his face every time. He remembered the comical sight of Enqua. This was the same Enqua who was spotted walking along the busy streets of London, proudly holding a very valuable vase. Surprisingly, this treasured item was stored inside a bright yellow JD sports bag, as he had personally stated. But, as he made his way towards the glass case, his heart filled with eagerness and anticipation. The sight of the vase, safely back in place, was something that would surely be etched upon his memory for eternity. He recalled with an all too distinct memory, the last time I saw it, indeed, was when I was making certain that it was secure. And now it is standing confidently again back within the museum for all eyes to behold.